Dive into a pool, and you experience an immediate isolation. The terrestrial hearing we rely on for spatial awareness shuts down the second we cross the surface, leaving us in a muffled, solitary void. This diagram compares the loose, scattered molecules of the air we breathe against the tightly packed molecules of water. Because water is significantly denser, it has an incredibly high acoustic impedance. It actively, physically resists the transfer of sound. Looking closely at the boundary in this model, you can see the result of that resistance. A sound wave traveling through water exerts 60 times the physical pressure of that exact same wave in the air. When airborne music from a standard poolside speaker strikes the surface, 99.9% of the acoustic energy simply ricochets off the water and bounces back into the atmosphere. The tiny fraction of sound that does manage to penetrate the water then faces a second problem: speed.
Sound travels roughly 4 times faster in a liquid medium. That rapid transmission short-circuits the microsecond time delays your brain relies on to figure out where a noise is coming from, leaving you entirely disoriented. These strict laws of fluid dynamics meant that for centuries, listening to clear, multi-tracked music while swimming was a scientific impossibility. The physics of the liquid actively locked the audio out. Despite the physics, the mid-20th century saw a massive cultural demand for aquatic audio, driven by the popularity of Hollywood aqua musicals. Stars like Esther Williams were filmed performing to sweeping orchestral scores with an effortless, superhuman grace. But the pristine audio in these films was a complete fabrication. Standard studio microphones failed near splashing water, forcing producers to meticulously dub the singing voices in post-production to create an audio experience detached from the physical reality of the sport.
Real competitive athletes of the era had a different experience. Early synchronized swimmers performing in these massive geometric formations were operating in severe acoustic isolation. Without the ability to hear the music underwater, they relied on intense internal counting and complex visual cues to stay in rhythm. Hollywood's cinematic illusion created a strict engineering mandate. Engineers were now tasked with finding a way to shatter the water's acoustic mirror and make that fantasy a tangible reality. The first push to conquer the acoustic wall didn't come from entertainment. It came from the maritime safety sector, where the inability to transmit sound underwater cost lives. The sinking of the RMS Titanic in 1912 proved that atmospheric warning signals, like sirens and lighthouses, failed in heavy fog. In response, engineers accelerated the deployment of electric subaqueous sound generators to replace traditional mechanical underwater bells. World War I forced the next critical leap: the piezoelectric hydrophone. Standard speakers use magnetic fields to push fragile paper cones, which fail instantly underwater. Piezoelectric materials generate electrical potentials directly from physical pressure changes, allowing military sonar arrays to function reliably in the crushing depths. In 1968, an electrical engineer named Alan Lubell inverted this military technology. He realized that by using heavy-duty piezoelectric materials, he could physically deform and punch the dense water directly, generating complex, multi-frequency musical fidelity instead of simple sonar pings. Lubell's broadband underwater loudspeakers gave synchronized swimmers the ability to map their movements directly to high-fidelity audio. This allowed for routines with a level of timing and complexity that internal counting couldn't support. But this brute force engineering had limits.
A piezoelectric speaker required a massive power amplifier to fill acres of pool water. The solitary recreational lap swimmer was still trapped in a silent void. The solution for the individual arrived in 2004 with the Finis Swim 3, a device that addressed the central failure point of waterproof earbuds. Traditional earbuds fail because water inevitably floods the ear canal, creating a dense fluid barrier that severely distorts audio frequencies before they can reach the eardrum. This diagram illustrates the biological workaround: bone conduction. Instead of pushing air into a flooded canal, specialized transducers rest securely against the swimmer's cheekbones. The acoustic energy bypasses the outer ear completely, vibrating the skull to send sound directly into the inner ear. Modern systems then faced a new hurdle: wireless streaming. Bluetooth's 2.4 GHz radio waves travel through air, but are immediately absorbed the moment they hit water. Engineers bypassed this by building hybrid transmission systems. A base station sits on the dry pool deck, catching the Bluetooth signal from your smartphone. It then translates that audio stream into lower-frequency FM radio waves, which easily penetrate the liquid medium to reach the swimmer's headset. By hacking cranial anatomy and manipulating radio frequency physics, engineers successfully bypass the barrier of the water, linking the submerged brain to the global internet. Clear underwater music triggers a physiological response known as entrainment. Because swimming is a highly repetitive motion, an athlete subconsciously adjusts their stroke cycle to match the beat of the music. Pinning that cadence to a track between 120 and 140 beats per minute acts as a flawless internal metronome, optimizing biomechanics and saving caloric energy. This chart highlights the quantitative proof of that synchronization. In academic time trials, older competitive swimmers utilizing bone-conducted music dropped their completion times in a grueling 800-meter endurance race by an average of 6.32 seconds. Those physical gains are driven by a cognitive strategy called sensory dissociation. By providing a dominant, engaging auditory input, the brain effectively masks the reception of internal distress signals, stops focusing on burning muscles, ignoring oxygen debt and lactic acid buildup. This sensory diversion accelerates the entry into the flow state. The extreme physical difficulty of moving through dense water is balanced by the auditory stimulus, and the exertion begins to feel automatic and spontaneous. These data points characterize underwater audio as a measurable ergogenic tool, one that increases human stamina by altering how the brain perceives physical exhaustion. For decades, elite swim coaching suffered from an inherent feedback delay. An acoustically isolated athlete would neurologically reinforce an improper stroke for an entire lap before finally reaching the wall to hear a coach's correction. Multi-channel FM bone conduction headsets have eradicated that delay. Coaches standing on the pool deck can now inject real-time biomechanical corrections directly into a swimmer's skull mid-stroke, accelerating technical refinement. The next frontier integrates biometrics and artificial intelligence. Upcoming software platforms will read a swimmer's heart rate dynamically, automatically increasing the playlist's tempo to force a higher stroke rate, or dropping the BPM to enforce a recovery pace, all without manual input. The century-long effort to break through the acoustic wall has succeeded. By restoring the critical dimension of sound, human ingenuity has transformed the isolating, silent void of water into a dynamic, deeply interactive sensory landscape.